There is a player who has walked in and out of the Philadelphia Eagles facility so many times over the last 4 months that he has probably memorized the path from the parking lot to the locker room, my friend. He signed with the team in March. He was released. He signed again days later. He was released again in June. And now, with training camp knocking on the door, he showed up at the Jefferson Health Training Complex one more time, this time for an official visit logged on the league's transaction wire. According to NFL trade rumors, that visit is very likely the step right before yet another signing. We are talking about a 23-year-old player, undrafted, who has not yet played a single defensive snap in the National Football League. So why on earth does Howie Roseman keep insisting on this name? In this video, I am going to explain who this player is, what he did in college to draw so much attention, why a devastating injury nearly ended his story before it began, and what this revolving door reveals about the way the Eagles build their roster. If you are a die-hard Eagles fan, hit that like button and subscribe right now, because quiet moves like this one are exactly the moves nobody notices in July and everybody talks about in December. Here is the deal. Training camp is starting, and this is the exact moment when National Football League franchises make the kind of transaction that almost never becomes a headline. Practice bodies getting signed, veterans on the open market coming in for visits, back of the roster adjustments. Most of those names disappear within 2 weeks. But every once in a while there is a case where the repetition itself grabs your attention, where a team's persistence says more than any official statement ever could. And that is exactly the case with the linebacker the Eagles hosted for a visit on Thursday, Chandler Martin. Let us start at the beginning, because his college story is far more interesting than the undrafted label suggests. Martin began his career at East Tennessee State, where he spent 3 seasons and piled up 103 tackles and 3.5 sacks in 18 games. Then he transferred to Memphis, and that is where he truly exploded. In 2 seasons with the Tigers, it was 206 tackles, 33 tackles for loss, and 10 sacks. He was named first-team All-American Athletic Conference in both of those seasons, in 2023 and 2024. In 2023 specifically, it was 17 tackles for loss and 2 interceptions. Do you understand the kind of player we are discussing here? That is not the profile of a special teams backup. That is the profile of a linebacker who lives inside the opposing backfield. In Week 3 of the 2024 season, against Florida State, Martin recorded 8 tackles, 2.5 of them for loss, 1 sack, and a fumble recovery in a Memphis win. Production like that usually does not go unnoticed by 32 franchises. So why did he go undrafted? The answer is simple and cruel: size. Martin stands right around 6 feet tall and weighs about 230 pounds, which makes him a few inches shorter and several pounds lighter than the standard inside linebacker in this league. At his pro day, he ran the 40-yard dash in 4.54 seconds, posted a 37-inch vertical jump, and hit 10 feet 6 inches in the broad jump. A legitimate athlete. But the National Football League is still a league of physical prejudices, and an undersized inside linebacker almost always pays that price on draft day. Martin signed with the Baltimore Ravens as an undrafted free agent in May of 2025 on a 3-year, $3 million contract, the standard version of that kind of deal. Baltimore released him at the final preseason cut, and then brought him back onto the practice squad. Throughout the year, he kept moving up and down between the practice squad and the active roster. He was elevated for 3 games, and he recorded 5 tackles, playing exclusively on special teams. That was 34 special teams snaps and 0 defensive snaps across the entire season. And then came the devastating blow. In Week 13, against the Cincinnati Bengals, on the opening kickoff of the game, Martin tore the anterior cruciate ligament in his knee. Season over. Career in jeopardy. Baltimore released him on January 12th. Think about how cruel that sequence is. A player who spent an entire year begging for an opportunity suffers a serious injury on the very first play of one of the few games he was activated for. That is when Philadelphia entered the story. The Eagles signed Martin at the end of March, on a contract initially reported as a 2-year deal, although later reports indicated the agreement was actually for just 1 year. And the context of that moment matters. The team had just lost Nakobe Dean to the Las Vegas Raiders in free agency, which opened up real room for depth and for developmental talent at the position. But the story did not move in a straight line. On June 1st, the Eagles released Martin. 3 days later, on June 4th, the team signed him again. and still within June he was released one more time. Now, on July 23rd, he came back for a visit logged on the league's transaction wire, which according to the original publication, is very likely the step right before yet another signing. But why all this back and forth? The answer lies in roster mechanics, not in indecision. National Football League teams constantly use the final spots on the off-season roster as currency for flexibility. Need to open up room to sign a veteran. Release the back of the roster player. Room opens up again? Bring him right back. It is cold, it is impersonal, and it happens to dozens of players every summer. But here is the revealing detail. When a team does this repeatedly with the same name, it means the coaching staff likes the player and wants to keep him close. Nobody brings a guy back 3 times if they are not interested. And the timing matters. The Eagles' linebacker room in 2026 has Zack Baun in command. Jihaad Campbell entering year 2 with expectations of taking on a bigger role, plus names like Jeremiah Trotter Jr., Smail Mundan, Chance Campbell, Isaiah King, and Deontay Lawson. It is a group with defined starters and a reasonable line behind them. But training camp is where groups break down. One muscle strain, one rolled ankle, and suddenly the team needs bodies capable of practicing every single day. Where does Martin fit into that equation? The honest answer is, at the bottom, but with a path open in front of him. And it is worth remembering that his road into this league has always run through special teams. That was 34 snaps on those units as a rookie. If he is truly recovered from the torn ligament, that is exactly the role where he can fight for a spot, whether on the 53-man roster or on the practice squad. And it is worth remembering something we always forget. Practice squad players get called up to active rosters all year long, and some of those call-ups turn into careers. Now, to be fair and transparent, it is essential to separate what is fact from what is expectation. First, as of right now, there is no confirmed signing. There is a visit logged on the transaction wire, and a reading that this kind of visit usually precedes a contract. A reading is not an announcement. Second, Martin has never played a defensive snap in the National Football League. Not one. All of the production we discussed here is college production, and the distance between the American Athletic Conference and the National Football League is enormous. Third, he is coming back from a torn anterior cruciate ligament suffered in November of 2025, and no public report confirms exactly where he stands in that recovery. Fourth, the fact that he has been released twice by Philadelphia in the span of a few months can also be read in a less optimistic way. Maybe the team simply likes him as a cheap practice body, and not as a genuine roster project. And there is one final point that needs to be said clearly. Stories like Chandler Martin's are the invisible foundation of every championship roster. Nobody buys these players' jerseys. Nobody debates their names on television shows. But they are the ones who make the team practice at a competitive pace in August, who cover punts in November, and who sometimes, when a starter goes down, walk onto the field and change a game. Howie Roseman built a good chunk of his reputation by finding exactly this type of player before the other teams did. With a 23-year-old linebacker coming back from a serious injury, without a single defensive snap in this league, but with top-tier college production and 3 separate stints with the franchise in just 4 months, do you believe Chandler Martin finally sticks in Philadelphia this time? And beyond that, are you betting he finishes training camp on the 53-man roster, on the practice squad, or off the team again? Leave your opinion in the comments. Do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I will be back later to update you with the latest Eagles news.